Ready. Play.
Hello guys, so this is probably one of the first ATP WTA Match of the Year videos you're going to watch from us this year, because this match is our number 5 pick on the ATP side, Jerry Shang against Corentin Moutet in the first round of the Madrid ATP 1000. And it's a pretty crazy match, which in a way kind of just makes it very understandable that it's in the top 5, but at the same time, first round of an ATP 1000 is maybe a little lesser profile than what we generally go for with these picks.
Yeah, we generally go for the bigger names, top players, later rounds, majors, 1000s. But this match had so much chaos and had two guys with different play styles, even though they're lefties. And so already there's a unique element to it. Plus, it was 4 hours and more, and there was a crazy third set tiebreak finish, and a lot of other incidents that happened throughout the whole match that you don't normally ever see in any kind of a professional setting ever. So it was just, yeah, it was a beautiful mess of chaos. But that's why I'm glad we have one slightly hipsterish pick in here.
Yeah, I think it's good to have one in there. I think last year we had Sinner and Altmaier at the French as like a hipsterish pick, and I think it's good to have one just, I don't know, just for the fun of it. And this one definitely belongs there. 4 hours. I think we had 2 4-hour-ish matches on the ATP Tour this year, the other one being Nadal Navone. And we actually also were considering that, the sheer match length sometimes is very important too. But here you have like 4 hours of chaos. But even going into this match, I think both Shang and Moutet, like when you saw the draw, you're like, okay, this is going to be a mess. This is going to be a very fun mess. What exactly is it that makes Corentin Moutet such a puzzling player to watch sometimes?
I know there's so many things he does that are just wild and unpredictable, right? From the way he, from his short ball toss to the way he serves. He'll sometimes do underarm serves. He'll go overarm. He'll do backspin drop shots out of nowhere. He'll get into it with the crowd, with the opponent, with the umpire. Like, he's really not afraid to. Yeah, I mean, just you get the full Moutet experience, but especially with the French crowd or just anywhere in Europe. Like, I feel like anytime there's a little bit of like adversity or a little bit of friction, like he plays that role of villain so well. And so you see that contrast. And Shang, meanwhile, is just much more your conventional type of lefty, but at the same time he also brings a lot of power and offense. And so it was just, you had that contrast of style as well with the like variety and skill and defense of Moutet, and like how quick Moutet is as well to like defend a lot of those points, extend a lot of these rallies. And so it's kind of a bit of a nightmare because he kind of drags you into these long matches with the way he plays. So yeah, that's, I think, some of it.
Yeah, the Moutet experience is definitely something else. I remember the very first time I watched him live, he took a medical timeout, 3-6 down in the match tiebreak. Obviously, that was in the Czech Republic against a Czech player, against Dalibor Szczina. So obviously the crowd didn't like it. Szczina didn't like it. Basically, everybody hated him. And that was at the very end of a 3-hour classic that I just left thinking, what am I doing here? Like, what did I just watch? I remember just feeling like completely empty for the rest of the day. Funnily enough, I think the next player on the court was Jakub Mensik. So I really wanted to check out his match, but I was still thinking about Moutet and all the mess that I saw there. Pretty much my next live experiences with him, they didn't really change. It was also like this. And I think Shang, in a way, like there is some correlation. Obviously, he's he's just generally a much nicer dude for sure. But the shot selection issues that he kind of has, and sometimes just going for a bit too much, trying to hit these like insane winners with great acceleration on the forehand side. Like, that's something he's always had since the juniors. And still kind of learning how to use that. So I think they kind of meet in the middle of like just great shot making, touch, variety. But as you said, it's not exactly the same playstyle. It's not exactly the same temperament. But that makes it even more exciting, maybe. Although I guess I've never really seen like a Moutet match against someone like Moutet, just because there's no one like Moutet on tour, really.
Yeah. I know. It was like Moutet against Gaston, maybe. That would be fascinating. But
yeah, that's kind of the closest that we have, probably. And you're right to mention the crowd as well. Of course, this match is played in Spain, but there's a lot of crowd incidents here. Sometimes they are really like rooting for Moutet, but there's also like here he actually asks for someone to be, you know, taken out of the stadium. So sort of battles with the crowd. This is also something that Moutet is famous for. In fact, this very year we had that Santiago clash against Jari as well, where the atmosphere was just insane. And then, of course, a month after Madrid, Jari comes to Paris and he has to play Moutet, and that match is also crazy. So anytime Corentin Moutet is on the court, you can basically expect something incredible. But this match, it just took it to a whole new level with its length, and it's just an unbelievable memory that I don't think someone who like didn't watch it at the time probably will not be able to like fully convey like what we're not going to be able to fully convey like what that match was, because I think after it happened, you know, the Twitter space was just like
Yeah. It was also one of the last matches of the day, I remember, and so there were more eyeballs on this first round than, you know, say even a match with like a top player and a lower seed. So on Stadium, so I think it got a lot more traction. And then once everything that occurred in the tiebreak, the final match tiebreak, and then also like, you know, what happened beforehand with like the coffee incidents, the water being sprayed on Mute and the from an outside court as well. So it just and I feel like the outside courts in general, like if you have a grounds pass for a tournament, that's it's a whole another experience, because you actually get to see you know, these things up close in person in a way that's yeah, you could feel that, on TV watching it even if you weren't there.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these incidents actually. So with the coffee thing, that was I mean, Moutet basically asked the umpire whether they can supply him with coffee, whether someone will bring him coffee onto the court. And he was very disappointed when he heard that that's not a thing. I think it was Andrei, the umpire. Basically, she just says that no, I mean, we don't do that at ATP Tour events, and he says that I've seen it many times on TV, which is actually very right. I mean, we've had many incidents, or like there are incidents, but like we've had many instances when someone brings coffee for the player onto the court. There's a famous Wawrinka one from the ATP finals. I think just last week I saw Katarzyna Kawa have it in a WTA 1-5 final in Buenos Aires. So it definitely happens. And then Moutet, in order to get coffee, I mean, someone from the crowd calls him, and they give him like something from a vending machine. At least that's what it looks like, and he gives them money. So this is like all happening during the course of the match. Needless to say, first time I've seen something like this.
Yeah, I'm practically buying coffee from a spectator in the crowd while playing a match with so much on the line. It was crazy. And it was also like early part of the second set, and you could, I mean, just his reaction when the umpire told him like, no, you can't, we don't do that here. He was just like, it was like, can I please speak to the manager? That kind of vibe.
There was a lot of good like drama with the umpire here. I mean, it never really escalated. I think she handled it very well. But obviously, if you're, I think there are certain players where, like, if you see that you're going to be umpiring a match of theirs, I don't know, like Gulbis used to be one of them for sure. Now we have Moutet, and you just know that you're going to have to sort of survive that, and you're going to have to withstand some crazy things there. And I think she did handle it very well. Although, of course, he was asking for the supervisor many times, and that water hose incident, that's also pretty crazy. I'm actually not sure like what my opinion on this is, because theoretically a player just like cannot really stop the point on his own. You know, a let should be called by the umpire. But basically what happened is that on the other court, because as Vansh mentioned, these are outside courts, so like they are pretty close to one another. And basically on the court behind this one, someone was already like trying to do some, let's say, renovation for the next day, and they were sprinkling the court. And while they're actually playing a point, Moutet is hit with some water drops from behind the fence, and he stops play. Shang doesn't. Shang doesn't know what's happening, obviously, and he just hits a forehand winner. Then there's a bit of a controversial call there, I think, because I don't know. I mean, can Moutet just stop playing on his own? I don't really know, but the point is eventually replayed.
Yeah, the point eventually gets replayed, but there was definitely some discussion, some back and forth there. But yeah, Shang had no clue really what was going on. That made it even more absurd.
Yeah, and that is all happening when Moutet is 0-3 down in the deciding set. He lost he took the first one 7-6, 11-9 in the first set tiebreak.
Yeah.
Obviously, so many crazy set points there already, but this is just this much really. And even though this lasted 4 hours, Shang then has a huge run where like he's winning games in a row. 6-2 in the second set. He's up 3-0 here. He could have a
Yeah.
15-30 lead, but the water hose incident comes, and eventually the umpire agrees to the claims because if I remember correctly, I think there's someone who like backs up his story basically. I think that maybe the supervisor was watching. Well, it makes sense, right? Because if there's a Moutet match, especially this one, the supervisor is probably already very close to the court, just waiting to be called.
Yeah, just waiting for
So,
something.
so yeah, I think the supervisor backed it up, and that's why it's sort of like it was okay then, and it was replayed. But as you said, Shang just had absolutely no idea.
Yeah. And then there was also one point in the tiebreak, right, where Moutet drops his racket, and that was pretty crucial as well. It was like 5-all or something in the third set tiebreak.
It is exactly 5-all in the first set tiebreak, and he hits a serve, but his racket falls out of his hand, and
Mhm.
Shang just has to return it into the court, which eventually he does. This is also like a pretty common thing. I've seen it so many times with Mute already. I mean, obviously, a racket can slip out of your hand. It's normal. It's just
Yeah.
very rare to have it at a 5-all in the match tiebreak. I think in Adelaide or something like that when he played Rune a couple of years back. I remember he even like played a rally with his hand. Obviously, it wasn't accepted. Like the first time he hit the ball with his body, obviously that was already the end of it. But I think Holger just kept hitting the balls back, and Mute was playing it with his hand onto the other side of the court. So it's not the first time, I guess. But yeah, at 5-all, he's obviously very frustrated. And still, I mean, sometimes it can be very tricky for the other player, right? You just see
Yeah.
what's happening, and then suddenly even the challenge of finding the court isn't as easy. I think there's a famous Dimitrov Verdasco, maybe
The
one, right?
Dimitrov Verdasco Indian Wells. I was in the crowd actually when that happened, and everyone
Oh,
just started laughing. You know, he serves and it just drops out of his hand, and he's yeah, the ball just goes by him and he ends up winning. Luckily, he still ended up winning that set, so it didn't really affect the outcome per se too much in that match, I think. But yeah, it was definitely one of the more viral moments of the tournament and
yeah, I
year.
think there was a YouTube video or something like that where it said that this is basically like the slowest winner you're ever gonna see or something like that. Here
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
bit different because Jerry doesn't have time to react and he just hits a normal return really. But anyway, it's in play. So he gets a match point. And that's an example of a shot that actually impacted a match in this
yeah.
case. Although, of course, the tiebreak ended 12-10 and it didn't end at 6-5.
Six match points, I think. It took Shang to get it done.
Yeah, like the day after, I think I was talking to someone at work about this match, and he's like, "Wait, didn't Shang save? I mean, didn't Shang have to save match points against Mute?" And I'm like, I can see why you would think that, given the scoreline, given it's 12-10. But actually, in this breaker, we just
Yeah.
constantly had Jerry with the match points. He actually didn't have to
Yes.
save anyone. So there was no like, straight holds and everything. Every single point was to be played for. And basically, most of the tiebreak was just Shang hitting an incredible forehand winner to get a match point and then somehow not converting it.
Yeah, and the last 2 points were insane. The two forehand winners that Shang hit, especially the match point. I mean, he just threaded that down the line. There was not enough room there, and he was way outside the court. And he just like he absolutely went for it. He channeled his inner like Verdasco '09, and just like hits the line on that forehand on from a stretch defensive position, and like Moutet is like staying in the rally, like defending, like getting all these balls back, and I don't know. It was just absolute madness. And you would think actually Mute would be, he would have a chance here. He would have a match point, but honestly, he never really. He was playing catch up the whole third set, basically, because I think he was already down 3-love, and from there he was just always, yeah, he was always trailing. I think maybe he had one break point to go up 4-3 that he didn't take from 3-love, but so he won 3 games in a row there. But for the most part, it was always Shang who yeah, felt like, he probably felt in his mind, I should have won this match like 8 times already.
Yeah, needless to say, this was a very tough ordeal physically for the players as well. 3 hours and
Yeah,
59 minutes, I think it ended up being. So, of course, a little shy of that record of Nadal Djokovic and in Madrid 2009. Also, Madrid, by the way. But yeah, I think for Shang especially, that was also one of the signs we got this year that, well, his fitness is getting to be, just in a much better place right now. Because in 2023, if you remember the Asian swing, he was just like
yeah,
finishing that season struggling in every third set. It just didn't really make any sense for him to play, really, because he was just getting wildcards to every event and then gassing out against like Nishioka, maybe Maki McDonald, if I remember correctly. There, he also had mono in the first half of 2023, which probably impacted that situation negatively. But I think from the very, very first week of the season, we saw that this is different in 2024. And if we wanted like a clear-cut example, this match is just a great show of that.
yeah, for sure. You saw like fitness is a huge thing, especially when you're playing against Mute in this kind of setting and conditions. He did, unfortunately for him, suffer two losses in the next two majors after Roland Garros in the main draw, from 2 sets to love up. That's where he still has more work to do in best of five to sort that out. But it was definitely a big improvement from last year, and this
Yeah,
match is a good example.
interested you mentioned that against Mute, you like really need to be physically ready, and that's true. Of
Yeah,
course, all these slices and basically very different shape on the ball that will also make you bend your knees a bit lower and everything. And definitely a match like this where Jerry's just like smashing the ball and has to hit through him was not easy to handle. The losses that Vange mentioned at Wimbledon to Dimitrov and at the US Open to Casper Ruud, that
yeah,
definitely is one of the areas to kind of improve going forward. I guess Jerry doesn't have that elite win yet. This wasn't it, although it kind of counts as an elite win in my book.
yeah,
I
yeah.
read a tweet from Moutet today, who after the match said that he was actually, well, I have mixed feelings about this because on the one hand, he just says, this is in French. So he says, bravo à mon adversaire. So congrats to my opponent a couple of times. Could have mentioned him by name. This is something that I'm now noticing because of reading that Conor Nyland book. Because I think there's a story there, I think maybe about Jerzy Janowicz, in fact, where at the trophy ceremony, he says like, congrats to my opponent. And Conor is saying that this is very common in tennis, that they just say, congrats to my opponent, and or even maybe this is about Djokovic when he played him at the US Open, that he just said something, my opponent, something, right? And they could just say the name and it would be like a little bit more personal. But
Yeah.
basically, that's only part of Mute's tweet. The other one is that he was at the hospital the previous day until 10 p.m. And then he requested with the ATP Tour that his match would be postponed by a day, which would give him a chance to like be a little bit fresher. And he, of course, was yeah, just angry that this was not fulfilled. And eventually, I think that's kind of what most of that focuses on. I honestly had no idea about this little backstory. But well, he just said that he hopes he hasn't made his injury worse. But even when the body is weakened, the heart is still there.
Wow. Yeah. That's I figured there was some kind of a reason why he wanted coffee, like something a day before or something. I was trying to think, did he like travel from some challenger, come, not have, like, was the turnaround too quick? And yeah, so that clears it up.
Yeah, I guess that explains it. But at the time, I was also kind of unaware of this, even of this tweet.
Yeah.
Although Muta, well, I have to give him that on the court. He definitely can be an asshole, and probably well off the court sometimes too. But he
Mm.
does kind of give credit where it's due sometimes. I remember when Blocks beat him in Danderit last year. He was just like he wrote like 5 tweets saying that the guy was too good today. So I also kind of like that he was very appreciative of Jerry here, even though he didn't mention him specifically by
Yeah.
name, I guess, but just my opponent stuff as usual. And yeah, I mean, you already talked about this, but the last two forehands from Shang, just a perfect example of bravery in that sort of a match.
Yeah.
even though so many match points have already come and gone, and so many match points have kind of come and gone in this way. I think there's also like I haven't seen it in any highlight package that I was trying to find the last couple of days. But I think the fifth match point for Shang was also saved via like a dead net cord from Moutet, which of course also adds to your potential nerves looking from Shang's perspective. And yet he still slams these two balls at 10-all, at 11-10. Yeah, just no, not really like thinking. Well, probably thinking, but like not really just taking any chances there. He just wants to finish the point on his own terms, and that's exactly what he does. I think the last one is even like the umpire has to check it because it's like so dead on the line. But
Yeah.
obviously it went in.
It did. Yes. Yeah. No. Those last couple of points were so brave because could have easily just fallen into Mute's trap over and over again and could have been 25, 30 shot rallies, but he absolutely went for it. And yeah, you got to do that sometimes.
When it comes to this match, we don't really have that much to talk about in terms of like the legacy of it. Like, oh, legacy actually we can mention, but sort of like the influence over the rest of the event, that was not really part of why we chose it. Jerry lost in the second round to Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. Of course, later in the year, he would go on to have some pretty good rounds, like the Chengdu title. For
Yeah.
Moutet, I guess even less so. Maybe like he got back to the main tour this year. He had that French Open run, but otherwise it's still like kind of up and down as he usually is. Then the Mets semi as well at the end of the year, but it's not really like a match that's ended up making one of these guys the story of the tournament or one of these guys the story of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably also why we have it at number 5, as opposed to some of the other ones that we would put above it. But yeah, at least Mute has the French Open run, and Shang has more highlights throughout the whole year. Particularly, yeah, the Chengdu title, but then also, U.S. Open was good for him, even though he didn't win that match against Rude. I think next year you could expect him more runs like that in the majors, third round, fourth round, that kind of a thing. And he did finish pretty close to the top 50 in the year. I think he's like
I think
just outside
inside the top 50.
Okay, yeah, so he cracked it then, and yeah, he's definitely one of the most talented players in that 05-06 year. Along with like Fonseca and Minchik.
Gonna have a good chance to show it against these guys in the next few. Well, I don't know when this is gonna be released, but basically when you're watching this, probably in the next few days, at the next gen finals in Jeddah. But yeah, I mean, for the event, even it would probably be impossible if this match like was kind of going to catapult the winner into the latter stages of the tournament, because after 4 hours of play, I mean, the reality is you're most likely going to be toast for the rest of the week.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he loses 5-3 in the next round to Davidovich Fokina, but I suppose he probably got a day off, although it wasn't really that much of a day off because this match finished so late. But
yeah, he did get a day off. This match, by the way, was starting really late actually, like 8 p.m. local time. Okay, I didn't know. I thought it finished at like 10 maybe or something like that. I was watching it at the time, but of course, after like half a year, I don't really remember that.
Yeah, we talked about Jerry and the rest of his year. We talked about Muti and some of the. You mentioned the match against Jerry and Roland Garros, and he made the fourth round there. Took the first set off center. I guess he had that one, the funny moment with the cameras, the umpire cams, that whole event. He and
you mean Roland Garros or?
Yeah, Roland Garros, where
Yeah,
they go
I
up,
know which one you mean. Yeah. But yeah, as I already mentioned, I think this was basically the joint longest match of the ATP Tour season as well. Would you say like comparing to Nadal, Navone, is it like that much better? What makes this match stand out even more, in relation to this, both coming so close to that Djokovic Nadal Madrid 2009 record?
Yeah, I mean that was a more later round of. It was a quarterfinal of a 250. This was the first round of a 1000. So I guess it's a little bit different. But I mean, with Nadal, you kind of had like the I think people were more kind of looking that at that in a more of a skeptical way about Nadal, right? They were kind of trying to critique his form and see like, okay, if he's going like 4 hours with Navone, what does this mean for his career and what does this mean for the rest of what he has left, right? As opposed to like maybe appreciating the singular match for what it really is versus like this one and because it's like Nadal on clay and because there's an all-time great in it, it has a different feel to it versus when it's just two players kind of, outside the top 50, standing out and having their shining moment. So I think this was, I think in some ways that's very different, but also it's, there's similarities in terms of match length, in terms of, being up a double break and then recovering the double break, or lead in the third set and then that same player finds a way to still win it in the end. Would have been heartbreaking if Nadal lost that match to Navone. So there's some similarities for sure, but I think the outside court plus the outside court factor plus the fact that both players are kind of in the same kind of hipsterish mold to most casual viewers, and also that it had those other incidents about the coffee and the umpire and just Mute being in it just adds a whole other element of drama that you just wouldn't get with Navone or Rafa.
Yeah, nice that it was also like very heavily talked about in mainstream tennis media. You have like
Yeah,
a tennis TV video on it. It's not like kind of like your usual thriller where basically nobody cares in the opening rounds, but this was one where I think a lot of the tennis community tuned in at the time. Nadal Navone, of course, as well, and then I think that was heavily discussed too. I think
yeah,
you're right with the points that the expectations were different. Here you're treating the same players on the same just simply on the same level.
yeah,
You're not really like thinking of what it means long term, but simply enjoying the match. In
yeah.
Nadal's case, I mean, he won one more, but I guess that 4 hour clash still was in his legs when he lost to Nuno in the final. So it also wasn't one that he was able to just like easily just overcome the fact that he played for so long. And in the case of Shang and Moutet, of course, as we said already, Jerry lost to Davidovich Fokina, but it's not like it was a guarantee that he would beat him if this match was shorter. How much? I mean, I kind of wish that we had someone from the Talking Tennis community who was in the crowd at that match. And how much do you think that we actually kind of lose from the actual experience when we're not in the stands, when we're not sitting there live and just seeing that from a much closer perspective?
I mean, definitely, you do lose some of that up close feel of watching the players. Kind of, you can practically hear the conversations they're having with people in the crowd, with their box, with their team. That's a big element of it. Being sitting there like 5, 6, 7 feet away from the players when they're going and getting their towel, to what they're, what kind of, you get a really good inside look at like what's going on in their head in some of those big moments in the tiebreak that you wouldn't be able to get on TV. But what was clear is that there was like still a passionate group of people from both sides, and supporting Mute or going rooting against him, or just in awe of some of the forehands that Shang was hitting. So you did at least get like that feel of what it would, you could imagine what it would be like even though you weren't there, which I think the TV did a good job, especially because it was the last match happening, so it was like all eyes on this one. The main feed even went there, and I think they showed the whole tiebreak. Tennis TV, you can watch the whole thing, or at least most of the tiebreak. Their highlights are really good, so they did a good job of making this match memorable and one that's worth looking back on in 2024.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a very different experience when you're there live. I've seen my fair share of like crazy matches, and I love that thing when you're like watching something and then let's say another match starts and you're still thinking about the previous one. Like your head is still just clouded with everything that happened in the previous, and that's for like any thriller that ends in a deciding tiebreak. Let's say this one, I think I would be. Oh, and this one actually finished late, right? So I
Yeah,
would be walking from the venue and just not believing what I actually just saw. So we do lose
yeah,
something, but I still feel like considering what people sort of like, what was their initial reaction of the tennis community to this match, it's clear that everybody who watched it at the time still enjoyed it, just so much, and that it stood out among the many, many deciding sets, tie breaks we get over the year, or just many very close battles that we get. Not only with its sheer match length, but also the fact that both players are just so I don't know, so fun to watch in different ways, but at the same time have many similar characteristics. And yeah, this match lands at number 5 in the rankings for us. I don't think we should spoil what's coming next because I don't know, maybe this is actually something that John will be releasing. I'm not positive, but probably just in order not to be, not to do something we shouldn't, we probably shouldn't spoil the rest on the list. But I feel like that's a decent placement for it. I think my idea for this, and I think I already said it when we were narrowing down the list, was that I really wanted to have it in the top 5, but I didn't actually care all that much which position it was going to take. Like, it was more about getting that one hipsterish pick, as you said. That was more what I was going for rather than actually having this match number 3 or 4. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to have it, wanted to kind of give it more spotlight once again.
Yeah, and that's great that we included one like this. There was some talk last year of us trying to do one hipsterish match in there, and it became harder. But this year on the ATP, we were able to find the spot for it, and yeah, it certainly is nice because oftentimes we focus so much on the stakes and the historical importance and the narrative, and that story always usually takes care of itself. But sometimes you don't really get to like maybe zone in and enjoy those little bits of drama, and like the match itself didn't have much of a huge bearing on how the rest of the season played out, or how even for the rest of their careers. It's just going to be one specific moment in isolation, but you'll always remember it because if you were there, it would have been an unforgettable experience and something you would have probably taken with you for months and years, and you would have remembered, like, you remember that day when we were here for this really wild mess of this 4 hour thing on like court 12. Like I'm like that it kind of has its own unique spot, and uh, for us in talking tennis, but also, yeah, just in general, I think it was covered the way it should have been. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, I think especially for Moutet, like, it's not a match he's gonna be thinking back to in a couple of years because he's playing this almost every week, to a lesser extent. But like, he's really used to the craziness by now. I probably think, but Shang maybe more so. I think Shang might still remember this, not as something that like changed his career in any way, but definitely as one of just the craziest matches he's ever played. One of the probably best experiences he's ever had because he won it. This is also part of clashes like this, that like you win it and it's the best day of your life, and you lose it and it's the worst one, basically. I also kind of want to highlight this reply that we got on Twitter from Kirit a couple of days ago. Kirit, of course, one of the members and long-time subscriber, but he kind of interested me of this because under this is WTA related, but it actually kind of comes back to that. So basically, he said that there were too few unusual picks in our matches of the year list, and he suggested some very interesting choices like Navarro Sakari Indian Wells quarterfinal, Krejcikova Kudermetova Wimbledon round 1, and Cocciaretto Bogdan Charleston round 1. And as you can see, like, yeah, even though we are very happy that we went very like hipster for at least one pick here, some people think that we actually should have gone for more. I don't really agree because I feel like if you have these matches like, yeah, Kudermetova, Krejcikova, Cocciaretto, Bogdan, like, what really makes them stand out from all the incredible free setters that we got this year? Because every single week there's a match that's like 7-6, 5-7, 7-6. Although maybe I can buy the Barbora example, even if the match was pretty poor. Just the importance of this win, right? I mean, it's basically Świątek Osaka at Roland Garros. It's kind of the same, sort of. So I just found this comment interesting and wanted to kind of just mention it on the show, that even if we are happy that we put this one hipster pick in, some actually think that there should be more of these matches mentioned, which I'm all for. Although I think when we're choosing just like top 5, you have to kind of go for the importance, legacy. They have to be really important. They have to be really like huge factors.
Yeah, and also one other thing I was thinking is that with the expansion of the 2-week Masters 11-day events and stuff like this, it does give opportunity for a match like this to shine, and that is maybe one positive you could look at, right? Like with the the cutoff being extended to like 96 player draws instead of 64 or 56. It does give opportunities for some of those players in that range to really stand out and have a match of the contender year type event. And it's
That's
still
actually very true. Because when you think about it, like the first and second day of the main draw action, right, at these events, like you don't have any seeds.
Yeah.
And this is where this match happens. So yeah, I guess that actually makes sense. Like sometimes even myself, as an enjoyer of, let's say, not exactly top level tennis most of the time, but I see these lineups and I'm like, okay, like I would like it at a challenger, but is that really something that I want to watch at an ATP 1000? But this match was kind of one of these that, yeah, just went out of line, let's say, and then just showed us that these days can be super entertaining too, and that they can still be talked about in December 2024. Will we be talking about this match in 5 years' time? My guess is probably not, unless it pops up in some match length records. But for the time being, the Talking Tennis team, which was basically me, Vansh, and John, decided to put it in the top 5. And then the whole Talking Tennis team decided to rank it as number 5 because that was based on a series of polls that John did in our group. Well, this was either the first episode or the second episode you've watched, because the WTA Match of the Year number 5 would be released more or less at the same time. Anyway, I think we pretty much said everything that there was to be said for today. Keep tuning in for the for the rest of the action. I think I will be back on 2 more streams. Not sure, Vansh, if you did any other ones, but definitely all 10 matches will be discussed before the off season. And as before the new season begins, and as we know, the off season isn't really all that long, so we will be back in prime time talking tennis action in no time.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.